Good morning, Torbay. Look, we are here, live, dangerous, staying safe from the Palace Theatre in Paynton. And this is not a faux backdrop, I promise you. Look at this. I can actually walk into the seats. This is a real auditorium from the fantastic Palace Theatre in Paynton. So I want to welcome our guests today. Really wonderful to have you on the line. We've got Alison Benny from Enlighten HR. Give us a wave. She is sat 2 meters plus away from me to my left, although yes, is over there. That's my left. That's good. And Sharon Robbie, beaming her in live from Plymouth because our whirlwind, we didn't dare let her up the A38 to come and see us. I'm going to take this off because I'm allowed, and those of you who need to lip read can now see me. We've got Uncle Jim Parker sat there from his living room on deadline day, about to go live with this week's edition of Torbay Weekly. Be talking to Jim in a moment. And of course, last but not least, I would say 3 meters away from me is Emily over in the corner. And now it's really weird because we're wearing our masks. We're doing absolutely everything we can. And this actually demonstrates what is crippling theatres at the moment. And we spoke about it 2 weeks ago. And we hoped we were going to be able to go live. Boris has put the brakes on slightly. Okay, we understand what's going on, but let's get through this next couple of weeks and see what the end of August brings for us. So we've also, we thank our sponsors today. Excuse me, I got a frog in my throat, which must be breeding in here. Our sponsors today, South Devon College, headline sponsors, and also Gallagher's, formerly known as Pavies, which we're very, very grateful for your sponsorship, because without your sponsorship, the forum could not exist. We rely on our sponsors, and we've written out recently to you all, our existing sponsors, saying we hope you want to renew and see value in what we do for you. Now, the forum is all about bringing businesses together, socially, professionally, to encourage active involvement in strengthening our local economy. And you can see our past events were really interesting. We used to meet once a month and have breakfast together. We used to shake hands. Some of us would kiss and hug. Now, I know we're not allowed to do that for a while, and some of you are probably quite glad that I don't do that to you anymore. But really, we are hoping as we get through this period, we'll all be getting back to normal. Towards the end of today's program, we're going to be introducing Helen Perkins and Julia Chisnell, working on public health and environmental safety with Torbay Council. And they're going to be talking to us at the end of the show today about an exciting event that we're running on the 18th of August. So please put that in your diary now. We're going to be doing a workshop on the environmental health position, the safety side of getting back to business. So before we get into the meat of things, this is episode 9. We've been doing this for 4 months, and I've been ably assisted by Emily, who, thank you so much for Emily for the stress and trials and tribulations of managing our virtual events. And Jim, from the news desk, give us an update on what's been happening lately, and what's the Torbay Weekly going to be looking like this week?
There's loads going on, Steve, and the theme really is, we have the pandemic and we're a long way from the end of that, but there are so many good things going on in Torbay at the moment that we believe that we should be shouting about them. I was talking to Darren Cowell last night, the deputy leader of the council, and Kevin Foster, and Darren was saying that he's been born and bred in Torbay 56 years, and he's never known a time where so many projects, schemes, regeneration plans are coming to the fore in Torbay. So the theme is that it's not all doom and gloom. Now is the time to push these plans forward, and just going through them very quickly. You've got £40 million worth of regeneration funding, hopefully coming from the government, for Torquay and Paynton Town centres. Bids have gone in now, and fingers crossed we'll get that money, which will rejuvenate our ailing high street. The Fragrance Group and the 4 hotels in Torbay, £140 million worth of money being ploughed into 4 new hotels, 2 on the seafront in Paynton, the Corbin Head site, and of course the 5-star, the gem that will be the Palace, the 5-star resort and spa with some buildings, which is going to be a real magnet for tourism. Then you got the VAT Group in Torbay Street. They're planning to go ahead with opening up in November. That will include a Hilton branded hotel. You got Premier Inn coming just around the back of that development. And last week I had a long chat with Peter de Savary, the millionaire entrepreneur. He's ploughed £12 million into the Kerry Arms Spa and Resort in Torquay. They've just finished building 7 new holiday cottages, which go for between 850 and 950,000 a pop. 3 of them have been sold before they actually go on the market. So the confidence is there. It's absolutely brilliant. And then we got a big jobs park at Claylands, which is coming online. And we got the high-tech cluster of companies that are doing world pioneering work in Torbay. And I think there might be some good news coming from the government very shortly on some more grant funding. So really exciting times. If you lump all that together, you can see why that it's not all doom and gloom, and it's naturally inspiring, and that will be our theme in this week's paper.
That's a perfect segue. And if you look at the screen, folks, you can see above Torbay Together and Naturally Inspiring is our own Jim Parker. So it's fantastic to have you with us, Jim, and great work with the Torbay Weekly. Not an easy ask to start a printed press in the middle of a pandemic, but you've done it and it is growing, and your online version is superb as well, so thanks for that. Now, you mentioned the grant scheme. The Deputy Head of Finance for Torbay Council, Sean Kramer, he's written to me, don't understand what is going on. Businesses that are below a £51,000 rate threshold can apply for a grant. That's a grant. You don't have to pay it back. Yes, it's taxable, but it will be given to you. There are 2 grants, one of 10,000, one of 25,000. And what we don't understand is that there are 200 to 300 potentially eligible businesses at the moment who haven't applied. If this is not applied for by the 18th of August and in those accounts, it will never be available. Well, it will not be available. So the council is currently phoning, writing to, emailing, trying to get people to apply. So if we were all together now in a room and I've got 40 people there, we'd all be able to look at each other and say, right, you 40 people, go tell 10 people. We will start to spread it out. Now, we can't easily do that, but please look at yourselves, look at the people in the room around you. Tell the dog, the cat, anybody, find out who these people are and get them to apply. There's another plus. Each one of those grants that is applied for and is successfully gained, another 5% is given to the discretionary fund. So that helps to increase the discretionary fund, which is still being dished out at the moment for those that fell between the cracks on it. So please, the plea is out there. Please go to the torbaygov.uk COVID-19 financial support. That's torbaygov.uk COVID-19 financial support. Have a look, tell a friend, tell your associates, tell everyone, apply for the grant now. We've basically got 14 days to do it. So that's your challenge. So hopefully that works for Sean. Now, we're going to come to our next item. There's been, pull the curtains back. I love the graphics. Well done, Em. Can you pull the curtains back? That's right. We can pull the curtains, let some light in. Today's Breakfast Bites is about kickstarting the economy and getting our workforce back to work. Now, there's all sorts of help and assistance to help businesses to get people back, but there are also some of the nitty-gritty side of actually the ways of actually we deal with that. So first of all, I'm going to introduce to you the whirlwind that is Sharon Robbie, all the way from Plymouth. We know when you've spoken to us before, Sharon, you've left people with their jaws dropping with your energy and entertainment. So please, without further ado, Sharon, tell us what the latest is on kickstarting business.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Steve. Fantastic welcome and introduction as always. I don't know whether I can be, it's different, isn't it, when you're talking to a camera and I'm sat here in my dining room and there's nobody around me. So there's no energy to feed off, but you've given me a bit of energy this morning, Steve. So thank you for that. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Sharon Robbie and I'm the Managing Director of the Devon and Cornwall Training Provider Network. Can I have the next slide, please, Emily? I represent more than 60 training providers across Devon and Cornwall, made up of universities, FE colleges, and a host of independent providers. We offer regional and national representations, all things post-16 education, skills and training. And one of the things that we are very much plugged into at the moment is lobbying, profile raising, and supporting a range of stakeholders with regards to COVID-19, which has had a real impact across all sectors and all areas of our lives, as we can see from Steve sat there in an empty theatre with a mask on this morning. One of the things that I'm very much engaged with is talking to employers, supporting employers, and making sure that they understand the range of government and regional incentives and funding that's available to them to support them. And the other thing to mention is that post-16 skills and training, we're not just talking apprenticeships, we're talking from entry level up all the way through to degree level. And there's a whole raft of changes that have been brought in due to COVID, due to the pandemic. Namely, we've seen lots of apprentices being furloughed. We've seen lots of breaks in learning. We've seen centres, colleges close their doors. So they've not been operating in the normal face-to-face way. They've been having to do things differently. And actually from that, opportunity has come. And I know that Emily Tucker from South Devon College will endorse this, is that they've actually changed how they operate. So there's a blended model. They've been doing lots of stuff online, which actually is greener, it's quicker, and in some cases it's more efficient. So the pandemic has brought massive change, not all bad, some of it's good. But what I wanted to talk to you today about is the fact that there are a number of incentives that are available to employers following the Chancellor's summer statement. And if we could have the next slide, please, Emily. So in the summer statement, Mr. Sunak put training and skills at the forefront of recovery, and it's a skills-led recovery. So they've thrown, $1.5 billion targeted and temporary support at the problem to try to get the economy moving again, to try to build confidence. It was great to hear from Jim there about the exciting things that are happening in the Torbay area, and that there is investment and there are opportunities. The employer incentives with regards to training and skills cover three main areas, which is Kickstarter program, which is a brand new DWP-led program, traineeships, which have been around a long time, but lots of people don't quite understand them, and apprenticeships. And we've got a fantastic tradition of apprenticeships here in the Southwest. Torbay employers buy into apprenticeships. I know they do a lot of work with South Devon College and other providers in the Bay Area, and apprenticeships are seen as a very valuable way to develop a workforce. And one of the things that the Chancellor was very keen to do is we have a whole plethora of young people who are leaving school this year, year 11s and year 13s. Those year 11s who age 16 may well have been going into an apprenticeship or onto some other training, and that's been halted due to the pandemic. And those in year 13 who perhaps would have been going off to university. But because the universities have changed how they're going to be delivering their courses, mainly online in the first instance, many people are actually putting their university placement on hold. So we have a real duty to make sure that these young people don't become NEET, which is not in education, employment or training. And there is a very real danger that we may well see NEET numbers rise. And that's something that we really need not to happen. Could I have the next slide, please? So I just wanted to quickly go through what those 3 programs are. And if you know about the programs, you'll know that Kickstarter program, 2 billion investment. This program is not the same as an apprenticeship or a traineeship, and it is aimed at those furthest from the jobs market. It is aimed at those aged 16 to 24 who are claiming universal credit or long-term unemployed. And they'll be working with Job Centre Plus job coaches, where they'll undergo intensive coaching and then a 13-week work placement. There is a 25 hours per week placement element, which is a minimum. And this, as I say, is a real effort by the government to ensure that those NEET numbers remain low and that we actually give opportunity to these young people. Next slide, please. There is an employer incentive to take on a Kickstarter, and that is actually a wage subsidy. So 100% of the relevant national minimum wage by age group will be paid. So if you take on a 24-year-old, you would receive £6,500. Okay, so employers can top up those wages and they can add hours if they wish to, and there is no cap on the number of placements. So you could take on 10 trainees, 10 Kickstarters, 15 Kickstarters, or just one. And we've already had interest from a number of areas. In fact, the Mayor of Chudley contacted us last week, and somebody's gone out there today to start a Kickstart program out there, which is a rural area, but fantastic opportunity for young people. The whole Kickstarter program, though, is based on the premise that there will be some progression, hopefully into an apprenticeship or into a job. But a Kickstarter could move into a traineeship, which I'll talk about in just a moment, or they could progress into an apprenticeship. One thing to say, though, a Kickstarter cannot also be an apprentice at the same time. And we've had a number of employers asking if that can be the case. No, it can't. The thing I'd like to say about the Kickstarter program, though, absolutely critical that the jobs that we're putting these young people into are meaningful, that they are quality jobs, and that there is some training attached, that they're not just sat in the corner, I don't know, shredding, filing, that there is a whole range of activity and tasks for them to do so they feel like a valued member of the team. So that's the Kickstarter program. If I could talk about traineeships now. And I don't know, next slide, please, Emily. I don't know if employers are very aware of the traineeships scheme. It has been around a long time, but as I say, it hasn't really been at the forefront of people's minds. Apprenticeships tend to have all the gloss and the glory, but traineeships are really going to come into their own, especially in this current situation. So over 111 million has been invested, additional investment in this scheme. They're trying to triple the numbers because we're going from quite a low starting point. So they're trying to triple the numbers. So traineeships are aged for those aged 16 to 24 years, 6 weeks minimum and 12 months maximum. It used to be 6 months, but it's been extended due to the current pandemic. And there are 3 core elements, and it's really important to note these 3 core elements because it's not work experience it's employability skills, which is actually delivered by a college or an independent training provider alongside English and maths, and then the work experience element. Absolutely key that we have quality work experience, and it's key that the employer works with the training provider and the individual. Now, a traineeship doesn't have to be sector specific because this is all about getting young people into the world of work and getting them to see what it's like to work, what it's like to do a particular job role. Absolutely fantastic. And between the 1st of August, so since Saturday, and up to the 31st of January next year, there is an employer incentive to take on a trainee. And the next slide shows those incentives. So we're looking at the moment that if you take on a trainee, you'll receive £1,000. Emily, next slide, please. So there's an £1,000 incentive per trainee, 10 trainees maximum per employer. Now, no salary is paid to a trainee. So this is different to the Kickstarter where a wage subsidy is paid to the employer. In this instance, just £1,000 is paid to the employer. But don't forget the English and maths and the employability skills, those training provider-led provision is all being covered. No salary, as I say, is paid, but they do expect transport and lunch costs are ideally covered by that employer. At the end of the placement, the trainee should be either offered a job interview if there is a job vacancy available, or at the very least feedback, a one-to-one, face-to-face interview with very, very constructive, positive feedback, so that the young person knows where to look with regards to next steps. And it is all about progression. And the employer benefits of taking on a trainee. Why would you take one on? Well, you get £1,000 for taking one on. There's a trial work period here. You get an extra pair of hands, and at this moment of time, that could be absolutely fantastic because you don't have to pay them, and you're giving something back to the community. So traineeship is an absolutely fantastic way to actually engage with somebody and to see exactly what they're like in your workplace. So it's a bit of a try before you buy. Now, what you could do is take on a trainee. You get your £1,000 for taking on Sharon as a trainee, and after, I don't know, 8 to 12 weeks, you think, actually, I really like how she's performing, and you may well be able to progress her onto an apprenticeship. And if you would progress her onto an apprenticeship, you would be entitled to another incentive. So a traineeship is the pipeline. Okay, so we've got the Kickstarter program where people are furthest from the jobs market. The traineeships are absolutely ideal for those who were planning to go into an apprenticeship this summer, or were planning to go to university, and now those plans are being halted, but they really need to be doing something. We need to keep them active. We need to keep them engaged. So a traineeship is a fantastic way to access a young person with enthusiasm who wants to find out more about the world of work and working within your organisation. So please do have a look at the traineeship, and anything I talk about today and you want to come back to me, my contact details will be on the slide at the end of this presentation, or contact Emily Tucker at South Devon College, and we'll be more than happy to help. Next slide, please, Emily. So moving on to apprenticeships, for those of you who are not aware, I'm sure you are, an apprenticeship is a job. It has a contract of employment. Okay, so it's really important that we understand that an apprentice will work a minimum of 30 hours per week, and they're paid according to the apprenticeship national minimum wage, which at this moment in time is £4.15 an hour, although most employers will pay more than that. And you can go from intermediate to degree level. So fantastic range of occupations that are now have apprenticeship standards attached. And we have levy paying employers. So I expect some will be on the call today, but in the main, especially here in the Southwest, we have small to medium sized enterprises. So they just pay a co-investment fee of 5% of the cost of training. So apprenticeships are a fantastic way in which to grow your workforce. And I was an apprentice. I'm a passionate advocate for apprentices. As I say, I started my apprenticeship back in the 1980s, and it's laid the foundation for everything I've done since. And apprenticeships are a fantastic way for young people to earn and learn at the same time, but it's fantastic for you as an employer to actually grow your workforce. Next slide, please. So apprenticeship starts have unfortunately fallen since the pandemic kicked in, as you can imagine. In fact, we're sat at about 65% down on the number of vacancies. However, over the last 3 weeks, we've started to see growth. I am taking calls from employers looking to resume their recruitment. Now, many employers have talked about pausing their recruitment until January 2021. So normally they would start taking school leavers on in end of August, September. They're pausing that and actually moving that further on to January. So that's where the traineeship could come in nicely, that if you were thinking about taking on an apprentice and you want to pause it, take on a trainee instead, try before you buy. It's like an extended job interview in a way. And then if you like the young person, that the young person's actually shown their commitment, shown their enthusiasm, shown their skills, then take them on to an apprenticeship perhaps in the new year. So the employer incentives for taking on an apprentice, it's really, really important that employers understand you have, if you're going to access these new incentives, it has to be a new apprentice. It cannot be an existing member of staff. It cannot be, say, a Saturday girl or boy who's worked for you and been on your PAYE in the last 6 months. They don't count. They have to be brand new. And the scheme is working between the 1st of August and the 31st of January 2021. So those incentive payments are in that time period for new members of staff. There's no limit to the amount of apprentices an employer can claim for. So fill your boots. And for apprentices aged 16 to 24, an employer will receive £2,000, and for apprentices aged 25 and over, the incentive payment is £1,500. Now, just to qualify that, there is already in place, prior to COVID, an incentive for taking on a 16 to 18-year-old of £1,000. So if you take on a 16 to 18-year-old apprentice between the 1st of August and the 31st of January 2021, you will receive £3,000 government funding towards that taking on that apprentice. Those apprentices or young people aged 19 to 24 with an educational healthcare plan are also in scope for that £3,000. The thing to point out, though, that new incentives are only paid if an employer goes via the digital system. So there's a new apprenticeship digital system. I can support them. Emily Tucker, South Devon College, have written a fantastic how-to guide. It's amazing. It does everything you need it to do. So if you need any help in getting yourself signed on to the digital service, please speak to Emily or myself, and we'd be more than happy to help. So those incentives are really about trying to kickstart the economy, really about trying to encourage employers to start recruiting, to buy into the apprenticeship scheme, and to actually start getting things moving. Next slide, please, Emily. And you all know this, that the benefits to employers for apprenticeships is the government funding, and now we have these incentives. You can grow your own talent pipeline. Jim's talked about the things that are happening in the Bay Area. You need people, you need skills, you need passion, you need commitment. You need to retain and attract talent, and apprenticeships do that. And actually, an organisation that invests in apprenticeships is seen by others, non-apprentices, as being a good place to work. Helps with succession planning, and it does help with workforce development and a reduction in staff turnover. I can't advocate apprenticeships more highly. So next slide, please. So I'm going to end on a little bit of a down, but hopefully a positive as well. Before I know we're moving on to Alison, who's going to talk more about redundancy and support with regards to the staffing. But there is a new redundancy support service for apprenticeships that was launched on Saturday by Gillian Keegan. So it was launched on Saturday, and it's a national initiative. They're very aware that as furlough starts to taper, that we are going to perhaps see more apprentices and the general workforce being made redundant. So they are looking to support those apprentices through this new apprenticeship support service. There's online support and via the telephone, and they've introduced an employer matching service. So what they really want to do is ask employers, if you have space, if you wish to take on, if you are looking to recruit, we need to know this so that we can add you to our matching service, so that if a young person's apprenticeship is, if a young person in the Torbay area is being made redundant, they can seek a suitable employer so that they can complete their apprenticeship. Absolutely key. And the government have given some flexibility around funding to enable that apprenticeship to complete. So the apprenticeship redundancy support service, again, if anybody wants information on that, or they want to contact me, they can do so at the end of this webinar today. And I think that is my quick canter through, Mr. Reynolds. I hope I was quick enough. I think my details are on the last slide, Emily, if anybody, yeah, lovely. So thank you very much for inviting me. There's a lot of information out there. There are green shoots, as I say. We are starting to see growth in certain areas with regards to apprenticeships and vacancies. And if anybody needs any support or help with accessing those incentives, please do contact me. My details are on the screen now. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sharon. Excuse me. Just remind me, what's a NEET?
Not in education, employment or training.
Okay, right. I'm nearly one of those. So I've had a couple of questions have come in. One from Angela George, who said, a question for Sharon. What classifies an employer, i.e. sole trader part? Is there any limit to size of business to qualify?
No, there isn't, but there are. So sole traders, if they don't have, if they're not registered at Companies House, there is a certain form that needs to be filled, but no, anybody can access.
Okay, thank you. And then one from Pete Blackler from Insignia Creative. Please could Sharon let the TBF have a summary of these schemes? There's a lot here to remember, absolutely. And this slides will be available, plus any other information. And I guess you, Pete,
I've done a PDF of the incentives that are available, which I actually shared with Plymouth and Devon Chamber. I'll send that to you, and then you can share that with your members. More than happy.
That's fantastic. And you brought us right up to 9 o'clock, so bang on time. So thank you, Sharon. Please do stay with us and enjoy the second half when, well, I mean, just a quick commercial break. Jim talked about some fantastic developments and buildings, and one of those is, of course, a flagship building for Torbay, which is the Epic Centre over at Paynton. And Nick Williams has asked to give a shout out for the Epic sessions that they run, and they're free to any business in Devon or Somerset and cover a range of digital skills. So the link to the current program is at tinyurl.com. Y8X, I'm not going to read that out, we'll publish it later. Okay, but so please Google Epic sessions at the Epic Centre. There's some free help, which is good. So we've got to get our businesses back in action. So thank you, Sharon. Alison, I think you'll be allowed to remove your mask while you're talking, as long as environmental health don't. I love your mask. There's a special mask, isn't it? Just tell us about that one.
Yeah, there's a lady who used to be making these masks. I'm sorry, I don't know her name. Roadcroft, and they've been selling them through Doric's pharmacy in Charleston, and I've been there. And they've raised about £2,500 for Roadcroft by doing these masks and selling things like that. So they do a lot of work for Roadcroft. Well, so it's brilliant.
Excellent. Yeah. And just to remind everybody, Alison is sat now actually 3 meters away from me that side. Did I say 2 just now? So Alison, we've got a real dilemma where people have been for nearly 4 months sat at home, being paid, being scared to death about potentially coming back, and now we're told to go back to the office. A lot of people don't want to come out of that. How would the flexible job retention scheme change that, and how do you see it panning out?
It's a really interesting time for businesses and for employees trying to get businesses restarted. The flexible furlough scheme came in on the 1st of July, so we now have the opportunity to bring people back flexibly. So it means that there's a lot of employers before that saying, I've got a bit of work, but not enough to bring people back full time, but I can't afford to bring them back if I've got to pay them full wages, which was the situation previously. So we now have a flexible furlough scheme in place, which means you can bring people back, and you could bring somebody back for an hour and get them to work and then refurlough the rest of the time. Could be a day, a couple of days, it could be a week, and then off again. So it is literally completely flexible. What you do need to do is keep a track of hours worked versus hours on furlough, because you need that for your payroll and for your reimbursement from HMRC. If somebody's working, you have to pay them 100% of their normal salary. If they're on furlough, you can reduce it to 80% capped at that pro rata to 2,500. So it is very flexible. It does make life a lot easier. What you have to think about is bringing your employees back, talking to them about coming back, safe workplace, re-inducting people, doing risk assessments, reassuring people. For a lot of people, mental health is going to be an issue. And also, quite frankly, there are people who don't particularly want to come back. Whether that's because they've been quite enjoying being at home on 80% pay, or whether it's because they're nervous about coming back into a workplace. The government has said, if possible, people should still work at home, so that should continue. And you can do flexible furlough for people working at home. Once again, they need to be keeping track of their hours. In terms of the furlough, if you're going to go on to flexible furlough, everybody should have, if they furlough people before the 10th of June, have to put them on a furlough agreement. You would need to do a new flexible furlough agreement in order to set that up. So, you know, I'm quite happy to provide people with access to something like that and support them if they need that. They do need to. Flexible furlough only applies to people who were originally furloughed before the 10th of June. It's not where you have somebody work all the way through and now you can actually put them in furlough. There are a few things around that as well. There's around holidays. I've asked a lot of questions about holidays during furlough. Employees can choose to take holiday during furlough, or you can actually compel them to do so. And I have to say my advice to a lot of my employers, because this has gone on for a long time, is get people to take at least their accrued holidays for at least their half year. Oh, we're getting a bit of feedback. Sorry. Okay.
Folks, we're getting a bit of feedback. Alison, you come slightly closer to the microphone, please. I'll move away.
So yes, and under the working time regulations, you can issue notice for people to take holiday, and if you do so, there's a certain procedure to use. You have to tell them exactly what dates, and you have to give them double the amount of notice as holiday. So if you want them to take a week's holiday, you have to give them at least 2 weeks notice, and you have to tell them the specific dates that you want them to take that holiday. But they can take holiday during furlough. It is payable at 100%. So if they're on furlough, you would pay them 100%. You still reclaim 80% from the government, but you do have to top it up to the full pay for that period of time. You'll probably be aware that from the 1st of August, there are now some costs to employers relating to the furlough scheme. So you now have to pay the employer's NI costs and pension contributions that you would normally pay, but you're still reclaiming 80% or capped at the 2,500. From the 1st of September, the reclaim is going to drop to 70%. 1st of October, it's going to drop to 60%. And then obviously the scheme ends at the 31st of October. The Chancellor has said that the scheme is going to end and they have no intention of extending beyond that. Whether that might change, no idea. At the moment, well, they might put something new in place at that point. I guess it's going to depend on how business is going. If you can get people back on flexible furlough, that is absolutely ideal. Ease them back into the workplace if you can. I do have some clients who have issues with some of their employees who perhaps are not British nationals, who've gone back to their home countries to serve out their furlough. They're quite entitled to do that. You can still make the reclaim, they can still be furloughed. But one of the issues that we're having, particularly if you're bringing people back on a flexible furlough, is that people are saying, I don't want to come back, or I can't come back. So be aware of that in terms of notice around talking to people. I was advising my clients a while ago to start sending out letters saying, actually, it looks like we're likely to be restarting, so be prepared to be called back to work. It is going to be an issue where employees refuse to come back or can't come back, and then, you know, does it become a disciplinary issue? Does it become unpaid leave? The furlough scheme is designed for where there is no work. Once there is work, employees should be almost compelled to come back to work. But it's about a conversation and the relationship and making sure that you are talking to people about their personal circumstances. If you want any help and advice on those conversations, very happy to have a chat about it. Sorry. Oh, loud. Okay. Some employees are still on full furlough. Is that better? Are still on full furlough, and that's fine. But we are advising people as you starting to move on to that flexible furlough scheme. Any questions on that, Steve?
Yeah, one of the ones was having to share a microphone, which was really interesting. But how do I cope with somebody that just will not come back to work?
Ultimately, well, always with a conversation. So how is it, you know, what's their personal circumstances? Why can they not come back? Is there anything that we can do about that? Could they come back working from home, for example? But if all of those things aren't possible, could they take a period of unpaid leave? Could they take their holiday?
all of those options first. But ultimately, I hate to say it, it becomes a disciplinary issue if people cannot or will not come back to work, because you've got a business to run and you've got to have those people in. You can have people furloughed and employ other people to cover their work while they're furloughed, which may seem a bit odd, but you can do that. So you could, for example, if you had somebody had childcare issues or other caring responsibilities, leave them on furlough and take somebody on temporarily to cover their work. You are actually allowed to do that.
Can you remind me, how long are the notice periods?
There are no notice periods in relation to furlough or return from furlough, unless in your furlough agreements you said that you would give people notice. But it is best to have that conversation, make people aware that you're likely to start bringing people back and that they will be called to come back to work.
And what would the consultation period be?
There is no consultation period in relation to furlough, but if we're moving on to redundancies and talking about redundancies during furlough or when people are back at work, and sadly that is going to be the reality for an awful lot of businesses. It was being reported on the news this morning when I was up at the crack of dawn getting ready. So the coronavirus job retention scheme is designed to give businesses a breathing space so that they didn't all rush into making redundancies. So hopefully to give businesses a chance to recover and not make so many redundancies. Lots of my clients are currently looking at or already engaged in redundancy processes because they know that the business levels are going to be lower at the end of the furlough period than they were previously, and they've gone into that pragmatically. If you make redundancies during furlough, you can put people on notice whilst they're on furlough, top up to 100%, you have to pay them 100%, top up to 100%, and at least the government is then contributing towards your notice pay costs. So from a pragmatic business point of view, it's helpful to do that. In terms of consultation for redundancy, under 20, 19 and less, then consultation has to be long enough to be full and meaningful. You do need to still consult with people, whether they're back at work or whether they're on furlough. 20 plus people, there's a minimum consultation of 30 days. 100 plus, it's 45 days consultation. And for those two latter ones, it's collective consultation. You have to elect representatives if you don't have a trade union or some sort of employee body in place with whom you can consult. So it's quite a complex piece of law if you're making 20 or more people redundant, and I'd suggest if you've no experience of doing that, that you get some expert advice to support you. Everyone's entitled to the notice either in their contract or 1 week for each year of service up to a maximum of 12 weeks, whichever is greater. So you have somebody employed for 6 years who might have a month's contractual notice, they are entitled to 6 weeks of notice. That can be worked or it can be paid in lieu. And plus they are entitled to, anybody over 2 years service entitled to statutory redundancy pay, which is what is the levels as a minimum set out by the government. You can always pay a bit more if you're feeling very generous.
I've got a question, Alison. What if on furlough, this is from Lorraine Lane, so what if you're on furlough and have gone through redundancy process effective from October and then asked back on flexible furlough until redundancy period comes out?
Right, so if you are in a redundancy process where you're either consulting with your employees or you have already issued notice, you are quite entitled to get that employee to come back and work during that consultation or during the notice period. And it could be on a flexible furlough basis, but they could still be serving out their notice during that period of time.
Yeah. Okay, and that's a question we've had come in from our live audience back at home or in their offices, wherever they are. Would you have any key piece of advice for any businesses at the moment that are unsure about the next step?
Make sure that you are talking to your team. Make sure that you've got a good relationship. Keep people informed. Make sure they know what's going on. make sure that people have some warning bells. So if people, you know, I've got clients where they still have people on full furlough, make sure you are keeping in touch with people so that they know, you know, give them a heads up. Because the worst scenario is people are at home on 80% pay, they think they're going to be coming back to a job, they think that the business is going to be just like it was before, and then suddenly they get made redundant, and they're like, well, had I had some inkling of that, I wouldn't have, you know, gone and bought the new garden swing or whatever. So it's preparing people for that in advance.
Alison, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Just going back to getting people actually back into the office, I think that's going to be a huge challenge for some people. I'm sat here with a collar and tie on for the second time in 18 weeks. I've actually launched a paper in a playroom with Freddie the Rocking Horse as my main partner. So that is a challenge. Can you do a bit of both? Can you do working from home and office?
Yes, absolutely. And the government's advice, if you can work from home, continue to do so. So you can do a mix and match. So it could be for you, for example, that you go in on deadline day to do the final bits, or the day before deadline day to get the paper sorted. But the other 4 days of the week, or sorry, Jim, the other 6 days of the week, you're working from home. So yes, you can mix and match it. As I say, hours worked are payable 100% of your normal salary. Hours that you're furloughed, if you're mixing that with a flexible furlough, then those hours are on the furlough scheme. But yeah, you can definitely mix and match.
Thanks.
And it's a good idea to do so. As I say, to be bringing people back, you need to do a risk assessment, you need to be setting your offices out. The other thing, you know, we have template letters that our clients are sending out to people, because there's also the fact you should be monitoring people's actions once they're back at work. I think we've all seen it where people are going shopping, and you know, first we're all 2 meters apart, and then actually we dive into the yoga and we're not quite supposed. And in the workplace, particularly where we're with friends and people we're familiar with, do we really strictly adhere to that social distancing? And it's important that employers take responsibility for that and monitor it. It is no different in health and safety terms to, for example, training somebody to use a piece of machinery that needs a guard on it. You train that individual, they sign, they say they've been trained, they know they need to use the guard. That's not the end of the employer's responsibility. The employer has to monitor and check that the employee is using that piece of machinery correctly. It's no different with social distancing. Employers need to be monitoring it, and where the employees, if they're not adhering, they need to be having that conversation with them. And ultimately, it becomes like any other conduct issue. It becomes disciplinary if people are consistently breaching those regulations. The other side of that, of course, is being aware of people's personal circumstances. You may have people with learning difficulties, things like that, where it's a little bit harder to understand or to help them to understand what they need to do. But there is help and support around if you need help with that type of thing.
Okay, well, Alison, we'll put you through it today. We gave you a microphone that was socially distanced, so you had to speak away from camera. At one stage, you were on 2 places at once, which is brilliant. You're wearing your Rowcraft mask with pride, and I really do thank you for your contribution today. HR, I always thought it stood for human remains, but I know it's the department in the office that some people would be afraid of, but we really, really do need to go through these processes very, very carefully together. So, what kind of state is the industry in at the moment? I know the founder of Airbnb was quoted recently as having 12 years' work destroyed in 6 weeks. And that's pretty poignant. And we've got a workforce that we're trying to get back to work. We've got all sorts of training, should we say, support and assistance. We've got people not applying for grants because they don't think morally they should apply for those. But if anybody's out there, just as an aside to what I said earlier, if you don't think that you really ought to take a government grant, please just let Torbay Council know that you would rather not, because they could do with the nil returns and they won't keep chasing and feeling bad that they haven't got hold of everyone. So please do that. I've just heard that we've got a new bronze sponsor signed up. So Lee XTB, Fine Antique Clocks in Exeter. I can't read that. It was a mistyped WhatsApp, I reckon. Going forward, we're going to continue these events as best we can. It will be manic like this. We're always thinking on our feet and trying to do something different to refresh, because connection is key. Before, we could meet and greet and there'll be warmth in the room. This is quite a clinical atmosphere here, so it's very much a download, and we can't see the feedback from the audience. We really do want to know what people think about these events and help, and we will get back together again. Getting back together again is going to be interesting, because we know, look at me playing with my mask all day. Look at us trying to fight over microphones. It's not easy. But I think the people I'm going to bring in now, two special guests today, are going to come and talk to us about an event that we're putting on the 18th of August. And I have Helen Perkins, who is the Principal Environmental Health Officer for Torbay Council, and hopefully Julia, if she's still there, Julia Chisnell. This is where the roller drums is where we can produce a guest out of that. And there, well, phew, that's a relief. Thank you very much, Emily. Isn't that the sound of lockdown? Is next slide, please, Emily. Now it's going to be next guest, please, Emily. So welcome, Helen and Julia. As I said, we're putting on a workshop together. We'll be listening to you. Can you tell us about the theme and the purpose, please? Whoever who wants to go first.
Shall I start?
Well, you can start.
Hello, everybody. I feel we've got a lot to live up to after listening to today. It was really interesting to hear and really useful. We're looking at preventing and responding to coronavirus in Torbay. That's kind of our aim and all we're focusing on at the moment, and that's what we want to talk to you about on the 18th. We really would like it to be as interactive as we possibly can in a remote age. So if you can, let us know things that you're worrying about or concerns and questions you have in advance. We can have some Q&A on the day and go through those, as well as anything that comes up at the time. So I'm in public health, and since February, March, I've been pretty much all COVID related, really, because it's been our main focus. And in the last few months, all local authorities have had to develop local outbreak management plans, and ours is on our website. And that's how we will support, really, everywhere to open up safely. So our business is to help make you safe and confident to be able to get going back to more normal lives, or at least the new normal type of life that we've got now, and keep you confident that you can keep your workers and your clients and customers safe, and that you know what to do immediately if anyone has symptoms or has a confirmed case of COVID-19. So that's the focus of what we're talking about. Helen's really got all the expertise around the environmental health setting up side, and I'll be talking about the response, getting ready to know what to do, so that the minute we find we have a case, we can prevent spread really, really fast and contain really, really quickly, and we don't need closures and we can move on. So that's what we're going to go through, and send us your questions. And really, it's very much a partnership. You know, no one of us can do any of this on our own. You know, business, Public Health England, environmental health, every single person in our community, we've all got to work together to be able to make this work. Everyone's got to remember the social distancing and the hand washing. Those are still our most important things ever that will keep us going. So it's all of us working together can make this, you know, can make Torbay keep going into the next few months through the winter. Over to you, Helen.
Thanks, Julia. Yeah, I'm Helen. I manage the food and safety team at Torbay Council. Our kind of role before coronavirus was the team that kind of went out and did all the food inspections in the bay. So we're very much sort of linked in with all the food businesses. Since the lockdown, I've predominantly been dealing with reopening guidance, trying to help all the businesses through that raft of guidance that keeps on changing every 24 hours. So that's been quite interesting for us to keep on abreast of it, as I'm sure you're aware. And really just trying to help businesses kind of understand what the priorities are, really. So I'll be talking around a whistle-stop tour of the basics, really. So things like risk assessment, track and trace, how to keep records effectively, a bit around data protection and the record keeping, and really just trying to give some basic sort of pointers and some good practice work we've seen in other businesses that's working really well, trying to sort of give some examples of that as well. We'll be also linking in with one of our restaurant owners that's been invited to do a 10-minute slot on his experiences during the lockdown and some of the sort of controls and things he's put in place in his business. We work quite closely with him, and he's a really good member of the community to try and impart his knowledge into other businesses. So he's been invited as well. Really just looking from our sort of side of things as well, we are kind of dealing with lots of the queries and complaints from the public that are coming in across the Bay. My team, that's predominantly what they're doing at the moment, is taking all the complaints and queries from the general public. So it's just to give you some information on what sort of queries are coming in the other way from the public, and that might help sort of just get some of the debate and questions going as well at the end. So, and as Julia said, any questions in advance would be really good for us, because there is so much guidance out there. If we don't have the answer, which on some of them we haven't, we can go back up to government and ask them direct before the next webinar. So thank you.
Well, I really appreciate you coming and joining us today, and then we will run this event together on the 18th. I know you're running one tomorrow for tourist attractions. Do you want to just give a little bit of a plug for that one?
Oh yeah, sorry, we've done 3 webinars for the tourism sector on food and drink and accommodation, and the final one is tomorrow at, is it at 2 o'clock? And if you email the council, we can give you a contact detail at the end if that helps to put out. You can book a place and we can include you on that. So that goes through some of the similar things, but targeted to leisure and attractions tomorrow in terms of prevention and response, and also an opportunity for questions. So yes, please join us, and we will probably put on others. And if there's also events or sectors that you think could do with some particular support, we're very happy to put on events or do some special tailored supportive information for those. So please let us know.
Yeah, and Julia, you are a consultant in public health working with Torbay Council?
Yes, that's right. In public health team.
And,
yeah.
And between the two of you, maybe you could give me personal coaching on mask management, because I'm really struggling with this at the moment.
It's not going great, is it?
It's not going well. And obviously this is a recorded program, so the evidence is now I will be locked away. And talk about locked away and Rowcroft, on the 30th of September, I have been found guilty and I will be locked away at Rowcroft Hospice on a jail or bail event. This was supposed to be going to happen in, I think back in April, had to be postponed because we couldn't be in confined spaces, but they found a hole deep enough and dark enough to throw me in, and I will be pleading for the bail to be paid to escape. So it could be an elf wearing a mask. It could be just the fact I shaved off my lockdown beard to try and disguise myself. But I really appreciate you coming on today. Thank you so much, both of you. I look forward to doing the question and answer session with you in August on the 18th. And you'll have some case studies as well to talk to us about. So that'll be good.
Yeah. We'll run through some scenarios. Yeah.
Some real life scenarios. So please spread the word on that. Safe and confident, tracking and tracing. Torbay keep going, helping Torbay keep going. We've kick-started it today. We're going to run it together. We will get through this. It's just a bit inconvenient at the moment. I really do thank our sponsors again, our headline sponsors, South Devon College and Gallagher's today. We do have our after sponsors, so thank you for all making that possible. I want a big thank you to Maureen. And in fact, if I move that way, you can probably see just about there. That's John Thompson, everybody. He is our only person. He's here as part of the business, looking at filming and how we can actually help make these events even better. And Maureen is sat way up over that shoulder there. I think she's up in the background. She's watching as well. I really do thank Maureen for facilitating today. I thank Jim and Alison and Sharon and Helen and Julia and Emily today. We've had a great attendance. We had 46 people on the line today, so thank you so much for dialing in. We will see you all on the 18th of August, and I think we'll play us out because we must keep it all going. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
And cut. Bye, folks.
Bye,
Bye.
Steve. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
Well
Bye-bye.
done. Bye.
Bye, Emily.